Hey everybody, this is Chris. I am kind of all over the place today. Obviously coming to you a bit behind, so let's just kind of dive right in. Um, I apologize that my screen is here. Let me stop sharing real quick. Okay, so let me go into slideshow. Cool. So, like I said, sorry, I was just putting a post-it note over my own face so I don't think about it too much. Um, the world's kind of super scary right now, and I just got hit with a bunch of stuff at work. A lot of my clients are receiving benefits like food stamps, that kind of thing, and so it can be very we're coming to the end of the month here, and it's scary. It's really scary. I donated blood yesterday. That's something that I do because I'm O negative. So I'm like, take my blood, take my blood. Um, that's something that I do that helps me feel like I'm helping people. And I signed up so through the Red Cross, you get alerts when your blood is used. So that's kind of cool. Um, just wanted to throw that out there because I know a lot of us are kind of feeling helpless and hopeless right now, and scared. And that's a tangible way that you can make a difference in somebody's life right now. Um, but yeah, so I haven't had as much time as I normally do to go through and do all the things. And this one's a pretty hefty lecture because we're going to be talking about the nervous system and self-regulation skills that you can like teach, learn with your clients. So super excited about today. I might skip past some of the more technical stuff because there's actually two videos in the lecture that you can watch on YouTube. Um, Again, you can control the speed on YouTube, so you can speed it up if you want to. And you don't have to know all the technical stuff, but it can be helpful. So if that's how you think, or if that's how your client thinks, that's a great skill or use of the technical information, you know? So yeah, we're talking week 11, self-regulation skills. I totally stole a bunch of this from Dr. Perry's old lecture. So yeah, I'm at work today too. So if weird stuff happens, just know, yeah. All right. So for the check-in today, I was thinking, um, when I was in my program for theater, I did a lot of Roy Hart voice work, which if you don't know like theater or voice work or what have you, that's totally fine. Essentially, Roy Hart voice work was he was a student of someone who um, fought in, I believe it was World War I, and who came back from World War I with what they now call PTSD, but back then I think it was called shell shock. And he wanted to understand the sounds that he heard while he was fighting in war. Um, he thought that if he could access the sounds that he heard and like make sounds that like for some reason the sounding of it, the voice of it, the inhuman sounds that he heard that were made by humans, in war, he wanted to use that and trying to navigate and find that and sound as the healing piece for him. So I think his name was Alexander Wolf. If y'all are interested, I can get more information and links and stuff. But there are some basic like voice techniques, right? Therapy, we think of therapy as like sitting and talking, right? Um, so much of our lives, like especially if you think about kiddos, like you're to be seen and not heard. Just even being able to articulate our thoughts, we're not really given space to just make noise. And one of the key components of Roy Hart voice work is that all sound has value. So it's not about singing. It's not about singing well. It's not about any of those things. Like, it's literally just like, what kind of noises can you make? Like, what kind of sounds can you make with your voice? And just kind of figuring that out. So kind of what I'm thinking about here today and how to implement it today is just kind of like, so like, if you're seated, you can do this seated. If you're standing, you can do it standing. I might actually stand up a little bit because I've got the room. I don't do this in my house so that you can't see how bad my house is, that as far as cleanliness, but I think you can see me pretty well. But if you do kind of like a shakeout, like and stretch. Oh, but especially like, if you're doing breath work, adding some voice to that, like a sigh, can be really, it can, I've seen it like lead into uh crying. So like even just like um like if people feel angry, they can go in their car and like listen to loud music and just sing along. Or I think voice is something that we don't really think about as far as like a tool or a technique that we can use, but it can be really powerful when we do find our voice, and are able to utilize it. At least I've found it can be really, really helpful and beneficial. Because sometimes going into the body is too much for people to start out with. So maybe like just even like touching into the voice, like you can feel your vocal cords. It's a little smaller and easier to like kind of tap into. But anywho, moving along here, let me know if you have questions or want further resources in that. It's pretty cool stuff. So just a reminder that, to do your weekly work. I think we're all a little bit behind, and that's totally fine. Just, catch up when you can. Reach out to me if you need help, or you also have like the optional makeup assignment. So if you need to miss a week, you can always do the makeup assignment. Or if there's something you want to share with me or do instead of the makeup assignment, let me know. I'm down to like work with y'all, especially, if you have a creative idea or something that you've been wanting to work on this semester, but you've not had a chance to. This could be an opportunity to do that. Um, a reminder that we're off for break starting November 24th. So just a heads up that we have that week off. Your skills demonstration, that recorded session, is due November 10th, which I'm recording this on Tuesday. Oh my gosh, what day is today? The 28th? I think it's the 28th. Yes, Tuesday the 28th of October. So it's due like essentially 2 weeks from yesterday. So you've got a couple weeks to get those done. Again, when you're turning in that recording, it's the 10 to 12-minute recording itself, and then also your self-assessment, that skills checklist, that also includes the transcript of just your words and kind of the back and forth about, why you said what you said. Not, it doesn't have to be super deep, you don't have to like justify your choices or anything. It's more so just to understand what was going through your head, like as you were sitting there and trying to get a little bit of information from your client. And then if you have somebody who's not an MSU Denver student that is your client, you do need to also turn in that consent form, okay? We do have one optional synchronous Zoom meeting left, and that is ironically on Monday the 10th, which 2 weeks from yesterday. And I'm holding that at like 9 in the morning your time, so 11 in the morning my time, just to kind of like vary up the times as well. We're going to be talking about the final paper or project, so whatever you'd like to do. And yeah, you do have that optional makeup assignment. So today we're going to be talking about action and accompaniment, so self-regulation skills. And bear with me, I'm still sipping on my coffee today. So we've talked about the nervous system before. I want to just kind of do a quick refresher on that so that you all have the slides handy. Um, and then there's a couple of videos, like I said, they're about 10 minutes long each. What to do when we kind of, or what else can happen if we can't get out of fight, flight, freeze, or collapse. Working with the of tolerance. I was about to say window of intolerance. Ooh, that's a different window. Working with executive function, like if there are issues with executive functioning. Um, we're going to talk about CBT and DBT a little bit. And so CBT is where cognitive distortions come from. And then I'm going to give you some tips, I think. We'll see. All right. So the nervous system, I'm not going to like go into too much depth with this, but I wanted to at least give you the breakdown. This is a different, more kind of technical breakdown of the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems and what can happen when either or both of them are activated. I really think the videos that are on the next slide, the links are, and I'll make sure that the slides are available on Canvas. I think the videos really take you through it really well. It can be a little kind of disorienting just because they go into the very technical pieces of it. You can kind of ignore that. It's not like we're trying to become like healthcare workers necessarily, but this image I grabbed from the nursing pharmacology website on the bottom here. But yeah, like the nervous system impacts like our whole body, you know? And so if we're constantly in a state of like hyper or hypo arousal, it makes sense that it has long-term effects on our organs, on our health. Um, so yeah, and there are also some ways of like, for example, dilated pupils can, tell you if somebody might be on a medication or something, but they can also tell you if somebody is kind of in that, activated state. Um, Also, for example, like, do you salivate a lot? Like, do you have a lot of saliva or do you have constant dry mouth? Um, do you have an accelerated heartbeat? Do you have a slow heartbeat? Oh gosh, when I donated blood yesterday, my heartbeat was so fast. They had to wait like 10 minutes and come back, and I was just on the cusp because I think I've just been so stressed out this week. So that I took that as kind of a learning moment where I was like, okay, what are our skills? Like, what are our skills? What can we lean back into? How do we get back in our body? How do we like slow that down? Because like it's not like I'm being chased by a lion here. The fears are validated and real, but they're not like what the nervous system was intended to help with. um, so if folks are having difficulty breathing constantly, obviously like anxiety, you can have like a panic attack, which can cause you to hyperventilate. Um, let's see here. I'm just kind of going through. Oh yeah, like if you feel like you have to pee all the time, you might be in fight or flight. Um, if you like just yeah, there's like a whole bunch of different things that um, like chronic stress and trauma, if we're constantly in this state of arousal, it can be very difficult to reprogram our bodies to like in our minds, but also it can have a negative health effects over time. So like if you're talking about, the social determinants of health, I think that's why that framework is so important and why our framework as social workers is so important because the person in their environment, I mean, again, if somebody is constantly being triggered at home or at work, we can't help them regulate until they're in an environment where they're not constantly being triggered, if that makes sense. We can give them skills to cope, but again, until that, you know, the trauma like stops, we're just going to be getting to the other side of things. We're not going to be improving or calming the nervous system down. Um, so here are the two links. So parasympathetic nervous system, it's if you think about it's like rest and digest. It's inhibitory, so you're less mobile. This is like depression. This is like if you're in like a major depressive episode and you feel like you can't move, or you have no motivation, or I'm trying to think of other ways people have described it to me, like I think those are kind of good, like sad and numb. feeling heavy, feeling weighted. Um, like I said, there's a 10-minute video here. Please watch that. Um, the sympathetic nervous system is where you go into like that fight or flight, where it's like, parasympathetic, you're going to see people more like this kind of, just like, and it's sometimes questioning, like if you're in a session with them, it can be kind of like pulling teeth a bit, because they don't necessarily offer additional information, or if you ask an open-ended question, they'll answer very briefly or shortly. Sometimes their speaking is a little slower. Um, the sympathetic nervous system, people are like this, like, they've got their shoulders up, it's like that, the whole like, are you tensioning your jaw? Have you drank water today? Like, um, so they're more excitatory. It like mobilizes us into action. So it's impulsive, it's anxious. Um, and there's a video here. This one's about 11 minutes that talks about the sympathetic nervous system. Okay. Trauma responses. You remember this from week 8. Um, so I just wanted to remind you like fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Um, so just a reminder of those differences there. We also have collapse. Something I wanted to highlight, whoop, uh, how like a way to differentiate between uh, freeze from shutdown or collapse is that um, you're both like freeze is when you're hyper and hypo aroused simultaneously. So it's almost like it's like the two things, like the gears are grinding to a halt because both are like um trying to contribute and get you there. But shutdown or collapse is when a client is solely like hypo aroused. So very difficult to engage, um, just not kind of not having it, you'll get that blank stare. I've got a couple of selectively mute kiddo clients who like, we talk about how we like to ask open-ended questions, but like if somebody is selectively mute, it's very difficult to get any answers if you're only asking open-ended questions. So like um what I'll do with one of my kiddos that is selectively mute is I draw. So the client draws with like a big coloring pad like right in front of their face the whole time, and then I'll just kind of ask them yes or no questions. But it's mostly silence. So I also color while she's coloring because I don't want to have it be like I'm just sitting there watching her like she's a zoo animal or something, or like I'm assessing her. I want her to feel like I'm participating in this too, that it's not just her. Um, so, but yeah, it's like so super difficult. It's like I might get mm, like 5 to 10 minutes worth of conversation with me speaking most of the time out of like an hour session. Um, but sharing that space with people can also help develop that trust that's so needed, and necessary to the work we do. Um, But yeah, let me know if you have questions about that. The slide's pretty great. NICAM also has like a good site that you can get more information on there too. Cool. So this is a little, sorry, I'm trying to move myself around so that I'm not as much in the way. So this is from a window of tolerance like website, but this is like an option of like a scale that you can maybe print out and utilize. Like if folks are really kind of struggling, um, if the different words that people use, right? Like I don't feel like I'm in my body. I have no body. I like having no awareness, like, oh, I just knock into things all the time and I just have no idea how I got these bruises because it's like I don't even feel anything. Shut down, amnesia, like paralysis, just feeling faint, all of that. Um, and like kind of a lesser version of that. So that's why we're going on the 1 to 10 scale here, right? So ideally we want to be in that 5 This is again that window of tolerance thing, like, um, you know, kind of in the middle, in between hypo and hyper, right? Um, but yeah, you can take a look at this when you have a second. Um, the website is linked there as well. There's a couple more, I think there's one more image in this slide deck that is from this website too. But just to give you like a sense, I don't know, I'm all about color, like, and images. Those help me a lot. So that's why I'm providing this one for you too. Um, so how the nervous system responds to trauma. Um, your sympathetic nervous system, when that's activated, you're hyper aroused, right? So it's upregulated. Like literally, you just think like "Brr," and forward, right? So you've got fight, which is to move towards, right? Like I'm gonna protect by, making a move first or making a move, period. You've got flight, which is just, moving away. It can be impulsive, it can be anger, it can come out as like anxiety. When our parasympathetic nervous system's activated, we're hypo aroused, we're down regulated. So literally just like you can see people who like clients who come in who are just kind of like, they've got that like curved posture of just like it's almost like they're protecting their heart, Um and it's just the low energy. uh this goes into like collapse, which is unresponsive, or potentially fawn, which is just to kind of like please and appease. So like if we're not completely to the point of like shutdown, um, then we try to engage just to be able to step away. Um, you can feel sad, numb, disconnected, or dissociated. Uh, and then when your sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system are both activated, you're up and down regulated. And that's when that freeze kicks in because it's like, oh, oh. um, I like to think of like fainting goats, which I don't know. I hope that doesn't sound like, you know, belittling or anything, but like literally the you want to get away, but also you want to like, um kind of stand up to the threat. And so they literally go rigid and kind of fall over, and it's kind of cute. But also like we do that and it's not as cute, at least not to us. Who knows? Maybe the goats think that we're cute when we faint. Um, so when we assess in that moment, so like this past slide here, it's like we identify the threat and it's like, can I escape? Can I overpower it? Can I make it lose interest? Then we collapse. Um, which actually, let me get my face out of the way here. Haha, there you go. I don't know why it keeps moving me to the middle like a weirdo. Cool. So when we assess that we can't reduce the risk through fight, flight, freeze, or collapse, we do that fawn thing, right? We tend and befriend. So moving towards uh, by caretaking or people pleasing, or creating a relationship in order to reduce the risk of harm, because that can be like a learned response, right? Um, and then there's also traumatic entrapment. So this would be like appeasing or Stockholm syndrome. So um, it's moving towards, but also like people pleasing when faced with asymmetrical power dynamics, um, especially as a response in like threatening racial dynamics, or where there's just like where there's a major power imbalance, like if somebody is taken advantage of at work, or you know, I think as somebody who was raised female, I was taught to always defer to men in situations. And I think that's kind of societally what women or people who are born and raised as women are taught, to people please, and but also to maybe defer to men. So like for example, this is like a Patty Hearst type of situation, right? And some domestic violence relationships, that traumatic entrapment, you know, it's like the trauma can cause like a dysfunctional kind of relationship to emerge where um, there's like a conflict between the trauma, but then also the relationship itself and needing and wanting that that love and that what is perceived as love and that affirmation. Um, Another example, this is just like from the world at large, like a dog showing its belly to the stronger dog, you know, or the alpha dog. All right, we're going into the window of tolerance again. Um, so again, reminder, stress and trauma can shrink your window of tolerance, but working as a practitioner, we can work with our clients to help them enlarge the window of tolerance, right? Um, this is from that website about the window of tolerance as well. This is just kind of another rate, like kind of illustration of it, like what we might experience versus what we want to experience, right? So kind of the lived experience versus the goal, like the goal of treatment. So the window of tolerance is our range of nervous system functioning. Reminder, if we're within our window of tolerance, we're regulated. If we're beyond that window of tolerance, so in that red area or, you know, kind of blue purple area, we're dysregulated. Um, you might, that window, which is normally kind of that like what, that 3 to 7 area, it can look more like just 5, right? If you have a sensitized nervous system. So if you've been exposed to a traumatic event or complex trauma over time or cumulative trauma, that narrows your window of tolerance and your regulation is just fluctuating at that point. So therapy, again, widens the window of tolerance. There are some limitations to this concept as well. So again, it's a metaphor that can be used if like visualization is something that a client identifies with or learns best with. Um, so for example, to like, okay, so we're going back into executive functioning, all of this from week 8, right? Um, we talked about how executive functioning is impacted by, which I don't think I went into this specifically, but executive functioning can be impacted by cognitive fatigue. So if you're thinking too much for too long, we need to be bored sometimes. So being on the computer, being on our phones, being on social media, having every minute of every day packed with something is not, I mean, it causes cognitive fatigue because we're having to be awake and present and all of those things for too much of the time, right? We're not bored anymore. That's bad. Um, Stress can be impacted by stress, especially stress over long periods of time. Exhaustion, so if we're not sleeping well, and dysregulation. So what we want to do as therapists is we want to assess each domain of the executive functioning and determine which domain or domains would benefit most from intervention in collaboration with the client individually or with the client system. So again, we're talking like family, school, whoever's kind of involved in that person's care. And also, like just a heads up, it's usually the domain or domains that the person talks about feeling the most stress. Um, so, you know, not being able to remember stuff or impulse control, all of those things. You'll also notice too that folks who have experienced like chronic trauma or stress have very rigid thinking, especially in regards to themselves. And so flexible thinking might be something to just kind of keep in mind, because some folks don't even have the language around these different, you know, types of functioning, right? Um, all right, so I wanted to throw this back in for you to review if you need to, but I'm going to keep kind of moving because we're kind of getting on time here. How we can help our clients with memory, planning and prioritization, task initiation, and organization. So lists. I personally, I have ADHD and I make lists. I make lists of my lists. Um, there are lots of apps out there. AI can help too. So this is not for us, this is for our clients, like how we can help our clients. Um, I can drop some lists of apps when I get a second in between things. If folks are really needing support, you can refer out for speech therapy or occupational therapy. Uh, Figuring out how to build and maintain a calendar for scheduling. Not everybody has these skills, and not everybody grew up with people in their lives who had these skills. So, money management, I know it comes up as a huge stressor for folks. And so, talking about basics of like a calendar for scheduling, like a budget for finances, right? Like the cool thing about being social workers is that we can talk to people about these things. We can get them resources so they can become educated about these things. Um, they can set alarms in their phone, or there are different apps as well, for appointments or for prescriptions. So like if they forget to take their medications each morning, and time management. Again, so many great apps. I know with ADHD, time blindness is another thing. So being able to know how long a task is going to take you can be very difficult. Um, there are even some ways of kind of like figuring out that time. Again, these are more for clients as opposed to us on our end. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in uh, oh my gosh, I totally forgot what it's called. Ethics Corner. Whew. All right. That was painful. Cool. So back on this scale with impulse control, emotional control, flexible thinking, and self-monitoring. So CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, this is where we have like your emotions lead to thoughts, which lead to actions, which lead to consequences. So the goal with CBT is to identify and challenge cognitive distortions, which we'll show next slide, and then try to reframe those cognitive distortions. And then DBT, we've got it's like distress tolerance is like your distraction, reality checking, you're focusing on a solution. Um, like if you have a limited distress tolerance. It also focuses on like interpersonal effectiveness. Like, are you able to communicate clearly with your what you're trying to say? Do people perceive it that way? Yeah, no. Also, that like no is a complete sentence. Setting boundaries, asking for help, or even identifying when you need help. Um, this is kind of that emotional intelligence piece. Mindfulness. So this is like you start with observing. So like I'll start by asking somebody to just notice, like when does this thing come up for you? Like just notice it and track it without judgment, right? So you watch for it, you do that value-free, judgment-free, that's what that means. Um, and then you start to build time, like in between the noticing and the thought and the action. So it also, CBT and DBT are very like, I would say closely related. CBT is more of a like a, I don't know, I feel like it's a more developed, like if you do CBT, then you do CBT only kind of thing. Whereas DBT, like you can dip in and out more easily, I think. Um, so yeah, radical acceptance and wise mind. We're all human, we all make mistakes. And so giving ourselves grace, giving each other grace, kind of assuming best intent of others and ourselves, trying to create that framework to see the world from or like rebuild it. This is also about emotional regulation. Like, um, if you reject the thoughts and feelings, then they tend to come back harder. Or if you try to suppress them, at least this is like from my experience. And so trying to embrace whatever comes up and riding that wave of emotions as opposed to immediately shoving it down or pushing it elsewhere. I don't know what turtle means. I should look that up. Or you do the opposite of, what you think you need to do or feel you need to do in the moment if it feels like, you're doing things wrong, you know. Um, do. I'm not going to go over all of these cognitive distortions. There's a lot of great resources out there. This is from positivepsychology.com. A lot of us have a good chunk of these or have had them over our lives. It's hard right now not catastrophizing, just being a person in the world in America right now. Um, so, you know, we're trying to just maybe distract ourselves sometimes. Um, yeah, cognitive distortions, I think they also come up because it's like a coping mechanism at some point, right? So it served us at some point, and now I think it becomes a distortion when it's really no longer serving us, right? Um, so look into these if you want to. Um, let's see here. I think I was able to find the template that Perry was talking about, but essentially talk to the person in front of you, talk to the client about what's worked for them in the past. What, what are they wanting to achieve? Um, what skills do they already have, because nobody is starting from zero. Like we're not working with like, newborn babies here most of the time. Some people do, but like we're not working with newborn babies here. Um, and we're like every person has something going for them, as far as a skill that they have or a perspective. Like even just coming into therapy, that's a positive thing. Like you did this much. Cool. You know? Um, that way it can maybe help you figure out what to teach them, and how, because what's worked in the past, great. If they like videos, cool beans, let's get you some YouTube links. If they prefer worksheets, not big, huge text blocks, but like, pictures with graphs and diagrams, cool. There are resources for those. And then like if folks are more into like the big texts, like if they like that kind of thing, there are various books, and workbooks even that you can find if somebody's looking for a specific modality or they're wanting to develop a certain skill, that you can recommend. There's always the library. If people can't afford things, they can go through the library. So for tips, I wanted to mention the anatomy coloring book. Um, so this is something, again, I used in um, my undergrad, or no, my MFA program, because we were learning about the different body parts and how they all go together. And we learned about our spines and bones and weird stuff like that. So if people prefer images, like this is maybe a good thing to have on hand, because then you can just, like, this is the nervous system. You got your sensory receptors. This is the sympathetic nervous system. And it, like when you're coloring it, you kind of have to engage with it on a different level. Um, here's like the spine. So yeah, there's just like there's so many resources that really it can be overwhelming. But this would also go into like psychoeducation, I would say. So like teaching people about their bodies and about the nervous system and how it is regulated or dysregulated, and all of that can be beneficial. It's psychoeducation. That's something you can do. Um, I feel like that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of it for today. Um, I really want to just take a moment to remind y'all to take care of yourselves, drink water. Um, I actually, I am part of the NASW Rhode Island board. So each state has its own NASW chapter. It's the National Association of Social Workers. Um, Colorado, that's actually when I was at MSU Denver, that's when I found out about it. So I've been a member since I was a student, uh, for the national organization, but then, transferred to the Rhode Island chapter when I got out here. Now I'm a board member. We're actually, meeting regularly. We work on policies. Um, if you're feeling super duper overwhelmed and like you need support or guidance, like look for folks in your area who are doing things that excite you and that you feel you have the capacity to meet, you know? I also recommend this book, Mutual Aid. Um, this is by Dean Spade. It's very tiny. It's not super big. It's like, I don't know, 152 pages with the resource list. And I'm also a real big fan of Adrienne Maree Brown. This is a book, We Will Not Cancel Us. So, um, yeah, take care. Thanks for your patience with me getting this out there. Um, yeah, let me know if y'all need anything. I'll be working on the whatchamacallit next. I forgot the name of it again. It's like an E word, but I keep thinking it's example, but it's not. The ethics corner. So I'll be doing that next. I'm going to talk about AI and just organization tips for how to do life right now. All right. Thanks so much again. Take good care. All right, bye.